Hi, thank you for joining us here at CANTV on Veterans Issues on Thursday night. This is January the 10th, and we're on once a month here. We're the United States Veterans Art Program. Our mission is to increase the representation of veterans in the arts, and one of the ways that we do that is by presenting what we call artistic tools to music and art therapists within VA hospitals. That would be the recreation therapy of the VA hospitals. My guest tonight is Lucila Ibarra, who actually I have come to know through one of the VA centers in North Chicago. That's Lovell. Lovell, and they have what they call an Expressive Arts Therapy group up there that we have come to know each other through that. There are recreation music therapists at every VA just about through the country. They work with people in any number of ways. You'd be surprised. The types of things that they do, it's not necessarily got anything to do with art all the time. Sometimes it's just as simple as something that you enjoyed doing, which is just going and hanging around with people.
And seeing everybody and saying hello and just connecting. Otherwise, I wouldn't get out.
Sometimes we'd rather not get out too also, but it makes us get out of the house.
And plus all the dogs there, the therapy dogs.
Oh, the therapy dogs.
Yeah.
Oh.
Many people bring their therapy
really?
dogs. Yeah, they have their own dog.
Amazing. Which is something that's an ever more popular thing for it's just the idea of therapy in itself is getting more and more creative, I think. And the recreation therapy departments use different types of creative ways with creative resources, with creative objects, which is one of the things that we do. I'm going to show you our website before we get started. We are the United States Veterans Art Program. This is our website, www.usvap.org. Feel free to email us and visit our website and see what we do. We are always up to something. We try to be. I'm talking with Lt Colonel Lucila Ibarra. And one of the things that we've talked about before is this issue of military sexual trauma. One of the things that is, of course, epidemic within the military and the veterans population is what we call PTSD, which is the umbrella diagnosis that includes military sexual trauma, which is MST. And we've talked about different types of therapeutic approaches to both PTSD and MST. We have some overheads for you later on in the show. We've talked about treatment, other treatments for MST and PTSD. We've talked about why it happens, why we are trying to talk about it, and primarily prevention. Prevention including what we were talking about before the show, last show, the show before that is what is it that we can do, both genders, in order to essentially get along with each other in a respectful way so that things like military sexual trauma, which does not necessarily include physical contact, physical assault, it's any number of sexualizing of the work environment that creates what we call military sexual trauma or sexual harassment. These are generalized categories that we're talking about how we can change so that we can all contribute in our work environments without feeling that we're either being threatened, disrespected, or demeaned. So, Lucy, you have been a lieutenant colonel in charge of a lot of these topics and issues, and perhaps I would be fair to say that you're feeling it's just as much a conundrum as the first time you ever heard about any of this.
And I couldn't picture it because back then, and is that we didn't call it. I saw a lot of behaviors, but me being in the military for the first time, I was enlisted. I came in when I was 18, and even before then, in ROTC, there was a lot of behaviors that were tolerated, a lot of teasing, a lot of bullying, basically, from just from someone being different, and that inevitably is either gender, race, culture,
nationality,
height,
right,
could be different. Even coming from a background of, I guess we had some students that were, their families were from the Navy, law enforcement. I had nobody in my family being in the military. But and that's why I kind of brought you this, is that if seeing what others do, because I saw them as an example and I saw them as a role model, I had no idea what they were doing was wrong. And so when I see some of the behaviors now, I say, where did we learn that from? Where did that person learn that from? And it's not automatic. It is a learned behavior, so we can unlearn.
There you go.
This behavior.
I was going to say that if all we can do is, and I don't want to use the word teach because that implies a little bit of the same sort of paternalistic, I know what's best for you sort of attitude. We don't really want to go there, but what we want to do is provide an example of a new way for people to behave that doesn't create problems just trying to work together. I think we understand that PTSD in a setting where there is an actual trauma that is caused by something that's not supposed to be part of life. I mean, you're not supposed to have a bomb go off in your face. That's not part of normal life. But a part of normal life is supposed to be getting along with your peers who are oftentimes the opposite gender. And sometimes they're the opposite in terms of sexuality than you are. So the challenge is that how can we lead by example? So it's very difficult to do things that are considered culturally a little embarrassing to do, that are game changers in the big world of behavior, of what's considered appropriate behavior.
Well, and then even though when I was 18 and I came in, I was in no position to question my lieutenant, my first sergeant, my platoon leader, my platoon sergeant. Nor when I was younger, I'm not going to say, Dad, what are you doing? I'm going to get smacked.
Right. I forgot to mention that this is a live call-in show. Your number there is on the screen, 312-738-1060. This is Lt Colonel Lucila Ibarra, soon to be a veteran, I believe. My name is Carol Williams. I'm an Army veteran. I was a little bit older than you were when I came in to the Army. And I was also married, and my husband was a Vietnam veteran. So I didn't feel so, I don't want to use the word naive, as I think an 18-year-old would feel coming out of high school. But I remember being 5 years older than a lot of the women in my platoon and thinking, if I was that young, I wouldn't be able to deal with some of the things that I questioned when I was in basic training, and that I questioned and objected to when I was in the service. So if you want to give just a little bit of an example of what your experience was when you were in the military.
Well, even as recent as when I was in Iraq, even though we've been we've been bringing these issues to the forefront. And
here's a picture of you in
Iraq. Well, no, that is our training. It's
Oops.
right before we got there. But yeah, there's more.
Well, here's a picture of her looking like exactly she looked like when she was in Iraq.
Right.
Okay.
When I see being a sexual assault response coordinator and seeing and as an equal opportunity advisor, many of the complaints, even though they were not going to be put in writing or official, they were still telling me what their leaders were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot, like for instance, the what they call the good game pat on the
Mm-hmm.
buttocks, and of course that's unacceptable. But again, how many of our juniors, of our young, are going to say something? And it's just like with Petraeus. Who's going to say something to Petraeus? Sir,
Mm-hmm.
that's unacceptable. Sir, it appears that...
Well, obviously no one did say that to
No.
him, unfortunately.
And that's what happens with many
Mm-hmm.
leaders. Many leaders are kind of let loose.
Mm-hmm.
People are afraid to say something to them. And that's why we have our subject matter experts. But even with us being equal opportunity
Mm-hmm.
advisors and sexual assault response coordinators, again, who's going to really say something to that captain, to that commander, to that XO?
Or to the platoon leader and you're all
Mm-hmm.
privates. I mean, really, it's, you could be on a bus, my favorite example, you could be on a bus somewhere and someone says something that's completely inappropriate. It's not going to hurt anyone physically. You let it go. You could have said something, but you didn't. And it haunts you for years that you didn't have the guts to stand up and say to somebody, what you just said, we don't need to have to hear that in this situation. So you need to change your behavior. And that's where it all starts. We don't have the expectations of ourselves being normal citizens, average citizens, changing the behavior of a 4-star general. But why can't we change the behavior of not just ourselves, but the people that we come into contact all the time with?
And that's why I empower others with courage and really kind of set the example for courage and with things that are unacceptable, and raising the alertness or the alarm bells to the commanders and saying this is and here's why, and just being very factual, very factual without getting emotional, but.
And people don't do that because why don't people do that? Why are some of the names that you get called when you essentially call someone out on the pat on the butt? Okay, I'll start. My favorite, the prude. You're a prude.
You're thin skin.
Thin skin.
Stop being so thin skin.
You're too sensitive.
Yeah. What do you expect? You're
uptight. You need to just relax, lady.
Especially when I was the first time to come into that office or into that area and notice, is like, how can y'all not see that? How can y'all not see that that is inappropriate, that is unacceptable? And we've been taught that. We've been taught specifically, no, this is not tolerated. But again, where I'm afraid to say something because I'm going to get voted off the island, and that happens. That happens.
That's a new term, isn't it? To be voted off the island.
Oh, yeah. So I'm the problem.
You're being way too trite, And here's my ultimate favorite of all ultimate favorites: is you need to pick your battles.
Oh yeah.
And this is just too insignificant and too trite. Why are you objecting to this? You need to pick your battles, and this isn't worth it. And I'm here to tell you, it's worth it. Pick every battle, because it's all worth it. And if you don't fight the small battles, you're not prepared for the big battles. And the world would like to tell you, well, just let it all go until there's some really big situation that comes along. Then it's worth your effort, and it's worth it for you to put all of your objections into play, but let everything else go by. And I think what we're trying to say is that it's the little things, the little fights, that you practice being good at those by saying, I really didn't like what you said. I didn't like what you did. Perhaps you're not going to make it a congressional suit, but there's a behavior there that's going to change other people's behavior.
And it's contagious.
And it's contagious.
It is
Thanks.
contagious. When I respect others, regardless how they treat me, I'm still going to respect them. But I will annotate. I will say something. No, I did not appreciate this, and here's why. I will be very, very straightforward with them, and then they'll learn. They'll see. I like what you did there. That taught me to do. And I've had that many, many times where I empower our soldiers. We know this is what's proper, this is what's not proper, and here's the consequences. And so I empower them to make decisions and to really educate themselves and to have that strength and that courage and competency level. I trust your judgment because I teach them. And if it is contagious, just like a inappropriate and bad and unacceptable behavior is pervasive, the opposite is also very pervasive, and it is more because people know. People realize.
But it doesn't come at a cost, because I think that one of the reasons why we know each other is because the cost of trying to raise this standard and bear this burden of intervention where you're going to get voted off the island.
Oh, I call it the leprosy syndrome.
Yes.
Where let's stay away from her because she's talking about something that we know we have a problem. But
let's show a picture of one of the ways that you have let off some steam. And you mentioned your therapy dogs that are at the Expressive Arts.
Oh yeah,
Center.
They're there, and they bring me. It's the dogs that bring me.
Yeah, this is Tony.
No, that's not Tony.
Oh,
that's,
I'm sorry.
That's
This
Sergeant,
is not Tony.
Sergeant First Class Albert in Iraq.
He's Sergeant First Class
Albert in Iraq. He steals sandwiches every now and then.
Oh, I hate to say it, but that's one good-looking sergeant. Isn't that what we're not supposed to say here? This is Tony.
That's Tony.
Now, this is what you call a alternative form of therapy. And we're going to talk about very, very briefly a couple of different therapy options because, as people have said to me,
he grounds me.
What am I supposed to do? Wait to for benefits at the VA because I was exposed to trauma, either military sexual trauma, post-traumatic stress syndrome. What am I supposed to do? The VA says they'll take me in 2 years. Yeah. There's a couple of different things that we would like to show just very, very briefly, and then we're going to get back to our conversation. There are some groups on the outside that also provide some therapy because we don't all need a psychiatrist and we don't all need drugs. Sometimes it's really a blast to have someone pay attention to you really intensely for an hour. This is www.helppro.com. And they provide free counseling in many areas of the country, including Chicago. This is another one called thesoldiersproject.org. You can go to Chicago at thesoldiersproject.org, and they will either hook you up with somebody to talk to you, or they will provide a direction of where you can go to hook yourself up with someone. If you're a Facebook fan, go to Facebook and plug in MST. You'll come up with any number of groups on Facebook that you can become a part of. say you're allergic to dogs and you can't do what some people do with their therapy dogs. Military sexual trauma retreats, uniform betrayal, a documentary about MST, Mothers Against MST, women, veterans of MST. There are a lot of different types of things that people do in order to get past what has happened to them, because like we've talked about before, being in the military is not really comparable to a civilian job in that you can't just get up and leave, and oftentimes you can't feel free to speak about your superiors. And did I mention, by the way, a lot of people are carrying guns, and it's a thought that you have. But you have a checklist of something that I find very interesting. It's called How Healthy is My Relationship? This is something that's analogous to, it sounds like you're talking about a relationship where it's a relationship, but really every single time you come into contact with another human being, there's a relationship there. And these are just different ways to assess whether or not you are being appropriate and whether or not the relationship is what we call healthy and whether or not the other person is appropriate. So you're going to start off with some of these questions you would ask yourself.
Yeah, for instance, and just, let's see, cheats or threatens to cheat, tells the other how to dress, support each other's individual goals in life, like educational or career goals. And the reason I bring this up is because I've been giving this to my soldiers, and each time I give a workshop, because a lot of times we are together for a long time, for many, many hours. And I see how it spills over. We call it spillage. It spills over to the next. If something is happening at home, it's going to come out at work. If something is happening at work, it's going to come out at home. So if we're using inappropriate language at home, in a bout of anger or rage, or where someone's really upset at somebody else, that's when the inappropriateness is going to come out. The you, which, the and it has. And
the flip side I find really interesting is that if you're using inappropriate language, attitudes at work, it spills over to home,
and vice versa. So that's why I say it's very, very important that we are aware, we are cognizant of our own attitudes, our own behavior, and be aware that we're in an environment that's not going to tolerate inappropriate behavior, discriminatory practices, or anything like that. Yells and treats the other like a child. Oh my gosh, I've seen so much. A full bird colonel treated me like a child, and it's like right before my eyes I just visualized him shrinking and just thinking, what an idiot. What an idiot. He just kind of, and I just kept quiet, and I said, yes sir.
Yeah.
Yes sir. I shouldn't be going to the defect. I shouldn't be eating in the dining facility. I shouldn't be going to the gym. So what do you, I was going to say, what do you expect me to do, is eat rocks? It was very attacking, you are doing this and you're doing that, and why are you, and you shouldn't be, and if you have a problem with reading this report, then you tell me about it, because this is not the time to learn to be a lieutenant colonel. And I go, oh, okay.
Well, I can almost imagine that coming no matter who the gender is of the ranked and the outranked. And again, if we can learn how to get along with each other in a co-ed mixed environment, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's religion, what we actually do is be able to not only feel more satisfied with ourselves and comparing less, but also, don't you think that the national payroll is getting more for their money if we can actually contribute the better half of ourselves to what it is that we're doing, which is our point here. This is our point. We're going to be here next month, and this is Lt Colonel Lucila Ibarra. My name is Carol Williams. We are the United States Veterans Art Program. I'm going to show you our website, and we'll sign off until next month, and thank you for listening. This is Veterans Issues, and hello to Jackie from work. Bye.